This is the second part of the notes that go along with this week's information. The first part we already did, which was on weathering and soil. So this set of notes is on the different erosional forces. Alright, so hopefully you have the copy of notes out. They look somewhat like this. Yours are on one page. I've just stretched it out again so we could see it a little clearer. Okay, so the first part of this are just some definitions to some very important terms. For instance, number one here is erosion. Erosion is the removal of surface material through weathering. So we're going to look at the four major agents of erosion shortly. Before that though, number two, sediment transport. Sediment transports the movement of eroded material by either wind, water, or one of the key ones we're going to look at, glaciers, is the second blank to that. And number three, the term is deposition. Deposition occurs when sediment is dropped by a transporting agent. So where it's deposited depends upon the energy that's put out by whatever's moving it, whether it's wind, water, or glaciers. All right, so let's get to the four major agents of erosion. And it also has some additional pictures that kind of go with this as well. So capital letter A, running water. The land area that gathers water for its river is called a drainage basin. And I'll give you a good example of a drainage basin. If you think about the rain that falls around here, it eventually flows into small streams or creeks that eventually flow into larger rivers, maybe like the Monongahela. The Monongahela flows down to the point at Pittsburgh where it joins up with the Allegheny to become the Ohio River. The Ohio River flows through Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and ends up draining into the Mississippi River. The Mississippi River drains into the Gulf of Mexico. So the total land area that the Mississippi gathers its water from is called the drainage basin. So basically from the Rocky Mountains to the Appalachian Mountains and everything in between, that's the Mississippi drainage basin. Okay, number two is actually just a letter. It's the letter V. V-shaped valleys are formed from rivers cutting down through sediments and rocks. So as a river cuts down through rock, it leaves behind a general V pattern or a V shape. And you're going to see that's different when we get to glaciers. Number three, at the mouth of a river that empties into a body of water, a fan-shaped deposit that forms is called a delta. All right, moving on to glaciers then. There are two general types of glaciers. The ones that I have pictures of we're going to look at are called valley glaciers, V-A-L-L-E-Y, or the book sometimes calls them alpine glaciers as well. Second type of glacier are the really big ones, the ones that cover basically the entire North and South Pole. They are called continental glaciers. So literally, the continent of Antarctica is covered by a glacier. Since it's so large in size, they call them continental glaciers. Number two, three erosional features of glaciers. I actually have a picture to show you. Now, it's not real clear in here, but in your book, it's the same picture. It's on page 858. But some of the features of erosion with glaciers are something like a horn. A horn is a very sharp, peaked mountain that basically glaciers have carved it out from all sides, and it leaves behind a very sharp peak. So horn is one. The term is called a cirque, C-I-R-Q-U-E. These are kind of bowl-shaped depressions that are left behind from the weight of the ice. And another one, this is kind of a French-sounding word, it's called arête, A-R-E-T-E. Arêtes are kind of sharp, pointy, spine-shaped mountains because glaciers carve them out on all sides. So that's it for erosional features that go along with glaciers. So number three, it says blank valleys are formed as glaciers cut out river systems. This is the other letter. Glaciers tend to have U-shaped valleys. So the letter U, shaped, is number three. What are some glacial deposits? Well, that's another picture to look at. This picture maybe is a little bit clear. Here's the glacier. You can see it's kind of sandwiched in between some mountains here. One of the key deposits a glacier leaves behind is this right here. If you can't see, it's spelled moraine, M-O-R-A-I-N-E. Moraines are all the boulders and rocks that are basically left behind as a glacier starts to retreat back. So think of a glacier kind of like a bulldozer. It pushes all the materials in front of it as it grows, so all those materials eventually get deposited somewhere. Another key word, number 2, is till. Till is all the fine-grained sediments and gravel that's basically crushed underneath a glacier. And then the third one, boy, there's a lot of choices here. You could put meltwater, you could put outwash, you could put erratic, you could put esker. Any of those are good answers for glacial erosional features. All right, moving on to capital letter C, wind erosion. Number 1, the removal of small particles by winds, leaving behind heavy particles, is called deflation. D-E-F-L-A-T-I-O-N. Deflation happens all the time around here. Maybe you play softball or baseball. You know, the wind kicks up and you got the small sand particles, dirt particles kind of hitting you in the eye and blinding you. That's a great example of deflation. Number 2, primary factor that affects wind erosion is speed. The speed or the velocity of the wind. Number 3 is a special word. The fine silt deposits left behind by glaciers and wind erosion are called loess. L-O-E-S-S. Our Great Plains states like Kansas, Nebraska, Iowa, they are basically loess. Very thick, maybe 2 to 3 feet thick soil layers. That type of soil is called loess. Number 4, that's an easy one. Dunes or sand dunes is the common desert or beach deposit. All right, and to finish up, the last one. Letter D. The final type of erosion is gravity, or what the book calls mass wasting. So when erosion occurs is the movement of material down a slope caused by a couple things. Letter A, human activity. You know, we like to dig out hillsides for roads. We like to dig them out for housing plans or houses. Well, by exposing that rock, we make it a lot more susceptible to erosion and, you know, to break apart and to move by rain, sleet, snow, glaciers, running water, whatever. So human activity is one answer. Letter B, another one is earthquakes. You know, when the earth quakes or shakes, not only does that loosen up rock, but then gravity has a chance to pull down on it. There are 4 types of gravity mass movements. Kind of had the first one written in there. It's called creep. And let me show you the other ones on the last picture. Again, boy, these pictures just don't quite look the same as what they are saved for me. But this was the example of creep. Again, there are pictures in your book of this. Basically, creep is very slow downward movement of materials. So whenever you see leaning fence posts and leaning telephone poles, that's a great sign that creep is occurring in an area. Another one is this picture here. It's tough to tell. This is a very steep-sided slope, and there are some rocks that are tumbling down the hillside and piling up at the bottom. That example is a great example of a rock slide. So rock slide is the second example. This other picture up here is when you have a large chunk of land that moves down a short distance due to gravity. That's called a slump. S-L-U-M-P. And the fourth example, I don't really have a picture of that. In your book, there's a good picture of something called a mud flow. Mud flow is when you've got gravity pulling down sediments, but there's also heavy rains involved mixing together, and literally it forms a river of mud. So mud flows can bury entire towns or villages. Usually this happens in third world nations, smaller countries near the equator, wherever it rains really hard for very short periods of time. So that's it for the different erosional forces. There's an activity with this, an assignment, and then there's also a quiz with this section as well. So this is definitely a pretty busy week.